Okay, I think we're going to start. Good afternoon and welcome to this month's Lunch and Learn Updating District Policy. I just remembered something, hold on. Okay, so during this next hour, I will be walking you through how to update your district's policies to reflect our NDSBA template language. I will also be sharing some tips and best practices throughout the presentation and highlighting some helpful policy resource documents. This presentation will be geared towards districts that are members of policy services and utilize our templates, which are the majority of you. However, for those of you that don't, the overall process that I shared today may still be useful when updating your policies. I will do my best to provide you with visuals and be as thorough as possible in the time allowed. If at any time during the presentation you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask them. To ask a question, enter it in the Q&A box and I will do my best to answer it. For those that can't join today or would like to watch the presentation again, we are recording this webinar and posting it to the NDSBA website under resources. It is also available on our NDSBA YouTube channel. So there's a lot of information I want to share today, so let's get started. Before we dive into the policy process, I wanted to briefly go through the anatomy of our policies. This information is particularly important for your board and any individuals designated to assist in the policy process. These designated individuals may be your policy reviewer, who is generally your superintendent or your board policy committee, which we recommend be made up of a small group of individuals that includes a board member, possibly two, the superintendent, and the business manager. We currently offer over 540 policy templates to our members. These are split up into policies, board regulations, administrative regulations, and exhibits. Each have a very unique purpose. As stated in the slide, a policy is a general statement adopted by the board that provides guidance, structure, and a vision for the district to chart a course of action. Policy should tell what is wanted or not wanted, why or how much. Board and administrative regulations are methods or steps for carrying out a policy. They are procedures used to put policy into practice, indicating how, by whom, where, and when processes are to be achieved. When regulations are not approved by your board, they are termed administrative regulations, or ARs as we call them, and are meant to be a quick reference for administrators. And then there are exhibits, which are helpful tools that may be used by administrators during policy implementation. These quick reference tools may include forms, charts, checklists, or other advisory documents. To learn more about the differences between policy regulations and exhibits and the role these templates play, check out our resource document up on the screen. This resource can be found in the Policy News Resource Library under Policy Ponderings. On every first page of our template, we have a couple notices. The first paragraph explains how to adopt or implement the template. This language is a little different for policies, regulations, and exhibits because they are not all approved and handled the same way. The second paragraph is a copyright notice stating that the template is the intellectual property of the NDSBA and may not be copied, distributed, or displayed without our permission. Members that willfully disregard the NDSBA copyright position risk suspension in the policy services program. Policy services members should always refrain from sending any NDSBA policy templates outside their district. Districts with policy template requests or questions are encouraged to contact our office. This actually gets us into the content of the policy now. At the top of each page on the left-hand side, there will be a notation if the policy is required, recommended, or supplementary. Policies that are recommended by Cognia, the state accreditation agency, are also noted in this area. In addition, regulations and exhibits are noted as such in the same area. When giving a policy the designation of required, recommended, or supplementary, I consider the following. A, is this policy mandated by state or federal law? If so, it is labeled a required policy. B, even though not mandated by law, should this policy be adopted to protect the district from liability or litigation? If the answer is yes, it would be a recommended policy. And then finally, C, although helpful, how genuine of a need will there be for this policy? If it is determined it would likely only be pertinent to select districts, I would give the designation of supplementary. As a reminder, these templates, particularly the recommended and the supplementary policies, should always be reviewed for district relevance and only adopted as needed. Not all of our templates are going to pertain to your district. More information on the designation or on these designations can be found in our FAQ for the policy adoption process. This resource document is also available in the Policy News Resource Library under Policy Ponderings. So on the top right hand of the policy template, you will see a string of letters. These are the template descriptor codes. Each descriptor code letter represents a specific policy, or specific policies, I should say. For example, all the B policies are designated for school boards. C policies address administration, while H policies provide guidelines for fiscal management. If you take a look at our policy table of contents, you will see these descriptor codes are broken out even further by categorical headings. This helps me to properly place each template. There are many times districts create their own unique policies, but still want to use our descriptor codes. There is nothing wrong with this, and we do encourage you to work with your district attorney if you need assistance drafting language. We at the NDSBA cannot do that for you at this time. However, I do recommend you contact me prior to approving or implementing the template so that I can give you some descriptor code suggestions. Keep in mind that if at any time in our office creates a policy and happens to use a code you choose for your unique template, then you would want to change it to stay in line with our lettering. This is why I usually suggest letters further out, just in case. All right, so the next thing I want to reference in our templates is the bold and bracketed language. This is language that your policy committee or board needs to fill in or select to customize the policy to your district. Not all templates include this bold and bracketed language. This language can even be optional. So that you can see what this language would look like, I have an example policy up on the screen. An example of language that needs to be filled in is highlighted in yellow with your district's name, or here with the number of weeks. An example of when you need to select the language is shown in blue As you can see, you can select either simple majority or 2/3 majority, or down here you can select board president or superintendent. And then finally, the optional language can be found in green. This language is not required to select. The board should include this language when this is the current district process, or the board wants this to be the district's process. There are no indicators that alert you to which bold and bracketed language you are dealing with, but when you read through, when you read through, you will find it to be pretty self-explanatory. If you ever have questions with the selection of the language, please contact me. All right, so this takes us to the complementary documents section of our policy. Like the title implies, these are MDSBA templates that complement the current policy. These do not need to be included in your final adopted policy and can be modified to include additional templates if your board wants. If you find an error in these or wish to add additional templates to this list, you do not need board action to modify. The complementary documents section is always at the end of our policies too. The final thing I want to highlight in our MDSBA template is the adoption or implementation date. This should be the date when your board has adopted a policy or board regulation, or the superintendent has implemented an administrative regulation or exhibit. All templates should have an adoption or implementation date. To be thorough, we recommend this date include the month, day, and year. Now that you know what our policy templates include, let's look at the process for updating or amending them. The following steps I share today are taking into account that your board has already adopted the policy template and wants to make revisions based on our MDSBA template language. If your district is adopting the policy for the first time, the steps are similar. There are a few differences that I will note throughout the presentation. For additional guidance on the policy adoption process, Policy Services does have various resources and presentations available, which can be accessed by going to the Policy News Resource Library under Policy Ponderings. All right, so you want to update your district's policies. This process generally starts because your policies are out of date, or the district has received a notification from our office that a policy or multiple policies have been updated on Policy Ponderings. Another common reason to update policy is you've been audited and prompted by DPI, BCI, or OCR, just to name a few, to update your policy. So what's next? Well, here are some recommended steps we encourage our members to follow when going through the process. They include retrieving policy, comparing the district's current template with the MDSBA template, reviewing any bold or bracketed language, adding policy to the board agenda, adopting policy, finalizing policy, emailing the updated policy to MDSBA. This does only apply to the maintenance members. And then saving policy, and finally updating your district's policy manual, handbooks, website, or other resources. Again, these are suggested steps we have found to be useful when going through the update process. If your district has more, that is fine, but at a minimum, you should be doing the ones up on the screen. So let's now take a further look into each of these suggested steps. So step one, retrieve the policy. Once your district reviewer, policy reviewer, or policy committee has been notified that they need to update their policy or policies, they can request the template by contacting our office or head to the Policy Services website and complete the policy request form, which can be found here. There were some issues with us not receiving the policy request notifications recently, but that issue has since been resolved. So we do encourage you to use that form when needing a policy. It is very easy and quick to fill out, and you will receive a response from us within a few days. If you don't hear from us, please contact me. If you are not sure which templates you need, there is a link to a list of all our available templates on the same page. Just as a reminder, members of policy services can request up to 10 of our policy templates per membership year at no charge. For those districts that have purchased our required or total template manuals or our maintenance, are members of our maintenance service, you will have access to the applicable policies, regulations, and the exhibits online, and be able to download them from the policy services website. Okay, to do that, your district will need to be logged in to download this information. The policy services login page is up on the screen on the left-hand side. Your login information would have been emailed to your district's designated policy contact or liaison. The policy liaison would be the caretaker of all the district's policies and in charge of updating these policies once approved. This designated individual should also be the contact for any communication or policy updates from NDSBA policy services. Typically, this individual is your superintendent or business manager, but if you do not know who this is or have misplaced your login information, then contact our office and we can provide that to you. This login information does change with each membership year, so it's important that your designated policy liaison watches for that email and saves the login information. Some are saved once received. It is the responsibility of the policy liaison to forward that login information out to board members, the business manager, or other administrators, so they too would have online access to our templates. For manual or maintenance members, you will need to go to the policy template tab to download the templates. As shown in the picture on the right side, a Dropbox menu, or excuse me, a drop-down menu will appear. Click on your manual. On the picture displayed, you see 3 options in the drop-down menu, but this is because I'm the administrator and I have access to all of them. When your policy liaison logs in, they will only see the district's purchase manual. Got a question here. Do you need to request the policy if you do not have the policy services maintenance agreement? Is this something new? So the requesting the policy or the maintenance members, that is not a new thing. We've had that prior to my arriving here. It's just another level of service. And the maintenance service is basically for those that are members of our web hosting service. And so we maintain your policies on our side. We upload them, update them. You have to send them to us, things like that. You don't have to, depending on, if you don't have our manual, you would need to request them from us, the policy. That's the only way to get those policies. But if you have our required or total template manual, and that manual is in the flash drive that we sent, or you can access it online, you can definitely retrieve it that way. Hopefully I answered your question. So we should request, rather than download a policy we may adopt. No, you don't have to request the policy. You can definitely download it. I'm just giving you another option to retrieve that policy. We prefer, if you have the download capabilities, the online manual, to go on our policy services website and retrieve it from there, download it from there. But if we, sometimes we do get those requests where they just come to us first, and we're happy to help you with that. Okay. So you will be directed, once you've clicked on your manual, you will be directed to a page that lists all NBSBA templates in the manual. Scroll down to the template that you want to retrieve and click the link. Policies and board regulations have 2 links. One is the clean or final version, and the other is the revised version, which notes all the changes from the previous template. This is so you can see at a glance what has changed. When you click on the link, the template will download into Word. So the next step in the update process is to compare your district's current policy template with the most recent NBSBA template. We recommend this step when there are not a lot of changes to the policy. To guide you through the process for comparing documents, Policy Services has created a step-by-step document titled Comparing Multiple Policy Templates with Microsoft Word. These step-by-step instructions also work for regulations and exhibits. Once you have completed the compare steps, a third Word document opens up that shows all revisions between the district's current policy template and the NBSBA's most recent template document using track changes. Changed text is usually colored in red. Added text is underlined, whereas removed text is shown in strike-through style as shown on the screen. For those districts that have yet to adopt the policy, you obviously skip this step. You don't need to compare. When there are substantial edits to the policy, we recommend the board make a motion to rescind or remove the district's current policy and adopt the new policy template. We recommend this instead of comparing the policies, because when there are substantial edits, the policy can get very busy when it is covered in all red edits. Frankly, in these cases, it can be a lot easier and cleaner to follow when you rescind the old and adopt the new template. That being said, so often boards adopt NBSBA's templates in their entirety, but they have not rescinded the old policy or compared it to the district's current policy. This results in the district having 2 policies in effect. Having duplicate and obsolete policies can cause confusion, and they are a liability to the district. So it's very important to work from your district's current policy. The board should also always remember to rescind the old policy at the same meeting that the new policy is being adopted. This is best practice and can be done in 1 or 2 motions, which is further explained in the Policy Services resource, Policy Motions for Substantive and Non-Substantive Changes. If that doesn't happen, the board will need to rescind the outdated policy at a future meeting. This brings us to step 3. Review the bold or bracketed language. So whether you are adopting the policy for the first time or amending the policy committee or board will need to fill in or select any bold or bracketed language in the template. I want to stress the importance of completing this language and having it properly reflect your district's process. So often we receive these templates back from our maintenance districts that don't update this language yet have adopted the policy in its entirety. In those cases, the policy is incomplete and needs to go back to the board for future action. So please make sure to thoroughly review and customize your templates before adopting them. It will only prolong the policy adoption process, and depending on the language, could cause some gaps in the policy guidance or liability to the district if you neglect this language. Right, step 4, add policy to the board agenda. This is pretty self-explanatory, but once the policy or board regulation has been reviewed by the appropriate individuals, your superintendent will want to work with your board president and the business manager to get these policy items added to the board agenda. NDSBA Policy Services has policy template BCAA, board meeting agenda, and pre-meeting preparation for which further defines this process and how far in advance you need to get items to the superintendent to include on the agenda, as well as when the materials should be mailed out to the board members and made available to the public. As for administrative regulations and exhibits, these generally do not get added to the board agenda unless your board has previously asked to review them. So adopting, amending, reaffirming, or rescinding new or existing policies or board regulations is the board's sole responsibility. These policy actions can only be executed by an affirmative roll call vote of the majority of the board. The procedure for adopting new policies or amending existing board policy is outlined in NDSBA Policy BDA, procedure for adopting board policy. Upon board adoption of policy BDA, they will have the option to expedite the policy process and adopt or amend policy on first reading when deemed necessary by them. When an expedited process is used, 2 readings or meetings need to be held to adopt or amend the policy. Reasons for expediting the process may include compliance with legal requirements, adoption of a new district process, outdated policies, or changes in the designated individual or title. The NDSBA does have sample motions for policy adoption and presentations that explains these policy actions in more detail and the board's role when adopting or amending policy on the Policy Services website. Administrative regulations and exhibits should never be adopted by the board, but may be reviewed as stated before. These templates should only be implemented by the superintendent. However, the board does reserve the right to review and veto any administrative regulations or exhibits should they, in their judgment, be inconsistent with the policies adopted by the board. A sample motion for the administrative regulation and exhibit process is also included in the Policy Services resource, Sample Motions for Policy Adoption. Policy Services also has policy CBAA, administrative regulations, that may also be helpful. So after the board has taken action and approved the policy amendments, your district's policy liaison, who again is generally your business manager or superintendent, will need to finalize the policy to accept all board approved changes. A brief video has been created to walk you through this process, but in an effort to save time, we will skip viewing it today. As stated before, this recording along with the presentation will be made available on the NDSBA website under the Resources tab. So when finalizing the policy, you will also want to remove the watermark, make sure all the bracketed language has been customized to your district, and update the adoption or implementation date. This is all explained in more detail in that video. As for the date, as stated previously, it is best practice to include the month, day, and year when the board took final action on a policy or board regulation. This date is typically noted at the bottom of the template. Administration should also note the date when administrative regulations or exhibits are implemented. So after policy action is taken at the board meeting, Policy Services maintenance districts must email all board approved policies and board regulations with their changes to the NDSBA office so that we can update our files, make them ADA compliant, and get them uploaded to the web if your district is a member of that service. Any board approved changes can be shown via track changes or handwritten in the template. We prefer that revisions be shown electronically via track changes. It does make it a lot easier for us to finalize the template. Along with the updated policy, you will also need to send in the board minutes documenting the policy or board regulation approval. These can be the unofficial or official board meeting minutes. We ask that you send this information promptly to Julie Steidler in our office. Please do not send Julie your final policy with all the changes incorporated and not noted. This does prolong the entire process, and we do work to get those policies back to you as quickly as possible. So anything that you can do, we can do to work together to get that out back to you and uploaded is appreciated. So please be punctual when sending in this information. Holding all your policies for a year or multiple years is not beneficial to anyone and can create some major confusion on which policy the district should follow. Julie in our office will be the one to finalize the policy and format and ready it for the website. She will also send you an updated, ADA compliant policy for your records. So thank you, Julie. NDSBA is not responsible for updating district administrative regulations and exhibits or updating them to the web, but you can send any updates to Julie to include in your district's electronic policy file. So the next step is to make sure that the policy template is saved electronically in a safe and secure location in the district's file system. It is important that the district take precautions to make sure this policy or any of their templates cannot be modified or deleted except by the designated individuals. NDSBA does maintain an electronic file of the district's current policies for maintenance districts. We also keep the last few years of changes, so you are welcome to contact us if you have misplaced a policy. So the final step in this process is to update your district's hard copy or electronic policy manuals, handbooks, and websites with the new or updated policies, regulations, or exhibits. Students, teachers, and parents should be made aware of these changes, made aware of the changes to the applicable policies, especially when changed mid-year. This can be done via email, website, interoffice mail, or snail mail. Some policies do require notification. This is usually noted within the policy, so make sure to follow whatever is written in your template. Policy Services has recently created a policy dissemination guide that indicates when law and or NDSBA policy language requires districts to distribute the policy, regulation, or exhibit templates to staff, students, and their parents. This list may not be all inclusive if your district has added additional dissemination requirements into their policy templates. Districts are encouraged to review their policy templates and confirm if additional requirements have been included. This guide can be found in the March edition of our policy news. So before I finish up today's presentation, I wanted to mention some things to remember. Boards should always be mindful when amending certain policies, particularly those pertaining to employees. An example of this would be the RIF policy. You don't want to be in the middle of a non-renewal season and decide to make immediate changes to that policy. That could be looked at as targeting a particular individual or group. This also goes for any policy that could conflict with the current year's negotiated agreement or contracts. If your board is going to make changes to these policies mid-year, NDSBA does recommend making the effective date at the start of the upcoming school year. Another thing to remember is that the board should review their policies at least once every few years. The superintendent is generally the individual responsible for developing a system of periodic review. The superintendent should also promptly notify the board when policies are out of date or in need of revision. It is common when policies are out of date or it is common when the board evaluates policies or board regulations, they will find that no changes are needed. When this happens, Policy Services recommends changing the adoption date at the bottom of the policy and then having the board reaffirm the policy with one reading. So policies are not meant to take the place of your attorney, nor can they address every potential situation that may arise. NDSBA does strongly encourage districts to contact their school attorney, our office, or other agency when additional guidance is needed. I do encourage you to check out all our all the resources mentioned today on the Policy Services website. They have been created to answer a lot of the policy questions you have and help you through the process. Depending on our office workload, I try to get out policy updates and resources every 1 to 2 months. Any new updates and resources can be found in Policy News under the Policy Ponderings tab. We do have a question. Will there be any new policies or recommendations regarding COVID protocol? We are currently working through a lot of the legislative changes and but in regards, and so those will be coming, will be sent out hopefully in the next couple months. But as for COVID, maybe some guidance, but I'm not aware of any policies that we are going to be drafting at this time. That might change based on district need or the law, but at this time, there is nothing that I'm currently drafting that pertains to COVID protocol. So finally, the new Policy Services, I wanted to mention the new Policy Service or the Policy Services membership year. This membership year starts July 1st. An invoice with your membership dues will be sent out in early July along with an email requesting your district's contact information and any individuals you want to receive policy update notifications. We want to make sure these policy update notifications get sent to the appropriate individual. So please include the contact information for administration, board members, or business managers serving for the upcoming school year. If these names ever change during the school year, contact me and I will get that updated. Membership dues and district contact information is due by August 13th. So please get this information to us so that we can continue providing your district with all the benefits Policy Services has to offer. Okay, so I just went through a lot of information in a short amount of time. Are there any questions, additional questions that you may have for me regarding the policy update process? Check the Q&A. Well, I don't see any, but must have done a good job or confused you more. I don't know. I hope not. But if you do think of some, please contact me via phone or email, and I would be more than happy to help or get you to someone who can. So our next Lunch and Learn is scheduled for June 16th at noon. Alexis and Amy will provide a recap of the 2021 legislative session, including any new laws and how they apply to school districts. You won't want to miss that, so make sure to register. You can register by going to the NDSBA website, go to the resources, go to the resources tab and select Lunch and Learn webinars. There you will find a link to register. A confirmation email will be sent to you upon registration. So a confirmation email will be sent to you upon registration along with information on how to join the webinar. If you do not receive anything in your inbox, make sure to check your junk mail, because sometimes for some reason these types of emails end up there. Okay, got a couple questions. Is it still recommended to keep rescinded policies for 6 years? I guess you would have to check your district's retention schedule. We keep in our office, we keep ours indefinitely, but as for the district, again, you would want to check your district's retention schedule. 6 years is a common time frame that we give to a lot of documents. So again, check your records retention schedule and go from there. What are your thoughts about online policy manual only, no hard copy? That is, I guess, up to your, I assume you're meaning like the board, you instead of providing the board with a hard copy, you just offer it to them. It's available to them online. And again, that's kind of based on what your board's preference is. It is a lot of work to print off hard copy manuals and get those updated when there are revisions. So I do understand wanting to maybe go to that strictly online. The nice thing too about it being online is, and just going from there, is that all those policies should be up to date. So if you had a hard copy manual, there could be some policies that didn't get up to date, and there could be some confusion. So again, up to your board on how they want to proceed. But personally, I would prefer just online myself. But again, check with your board. All right. Well, thank you for joining us today. We at the NDSBA truly do appreciate you taking part in these Lunch and Learns and all your questions and comments. We want these sessions to be educational, pertinent, and timely. So if you ever think of a topic that you would like us to address, please don't hesitate to contact our Executive Director, Alexis Baxley. Thank you again for joining us, your continued membership, and all that you do for your district. Have a great rest of your day, guys. Thank you.